Hey my lovelies, welcome back to my channel. In today's video I'm going to be sharing with you how I made this lovely 6 pieces blouse, and here is my own recreation. If this sounds like what you're interested in, please keep on watching. So as you can see, I've marked out some basic lines. So here, right here is my shoulder line, and I have from my shoulder line to my bust point to be 10.5 inches. And again, I have from my shoulder to my under bust, which is 13.5 inches. I also have from my shoulder to my waistline 17 inches. My front waistline, please take note, 17 inches. And from the shoulder to the top length or blouse length is 24 inches. So do it to mark out your desired length. So I'm going to start by marking down 6.5 inches from my shoulder line. As you can see, I will go ahead to connect it across. I'm going to go ahead to cut it out. So it's going to be replaced with the black knit on the upper part of the blouse. So next, I'm going to mark my nipple to nipple measurement divided by 2 from the top all the way to the bottom, and I will use my straight ruler to connect it into a straight line. So I'm going to be tightening my under bust by 2.5 inches. So I divided that 2.5 inches into 2, and I will mark what I have on both sides of the dart leg like so. I will mark it all the way to the blouse length, and I will connect into a straight line. I'm going to come down by 1 inch from the bust point, and I will use the curved part of my ruler to blend my dart out properly, as you can see on the screen. I'm also going to tighten the upper bust area. So to do that, I'll be tightening it with 1 inch. I'm going to mark 1 inch like this, and I'll blend it back to the bust point line, as you can see me doing on the screen. Now I'm going to take my body measurement. On this upper part, I'm going to mark my bust measurement divided by 4. I will replace the 1 inch that I took out on the upper part. On my waistline, I'll also divide my waist by 4 and mark out, and I will go ahead to replace this 2.5 inches that I also took out around the waist area, and I'm going to go ahead to connect these 2 points together. So coming over to the blouse length, I'm going to divide my hip measurement by 4 and mark out. So at this point, I forgot to replace my dart, but I did that immediately I realized I didn't mark it out. So I'm going to go ahead now to replace my dart. I'm going to go ahead to reconnect it, and I won't be using this again. So I'm going ahead to shade the part I'll be cutting out. Next, I'm going to come down by 1 inch from this point, and I'm going to connect it back to the dart like this. So the next thing I'm going to do now is to tighten my bust, and to do that, I'm going to come down by 1.5 inches from my bust point. So the difference between my front and back half length is 1.5 inches, and I'll be explaining that later. I'm going ahead to mark my stitching allowance, as you can see. So next, I'm going to be closing my bust dart. I will extend this line first of all. I'll be closing the bust dart. So to close it, I will cut out the side like this, very close to the bust dart. I will close it, as you can see. So after closing your bust dart, you will notice that the line is broken. The line is no longer straight. So I'm going to go ahead to straighten it again. Just watch carefully what I am doing. So after that, I'm going to go ahead to cut out the side proper. And this is what I have. So I'm extending this tiny armhole as well. Then I will go ahead to cut through this part like this, and then I'll properly close my bust dart. I will use my cello tape to hold it down, and I'll continue to cut out my dart. So that is basically all for the front pattern. So after cutting out, we are going to go ahead to work on the back pattern. For the back pattern, I'm going to begin by marking out my zipper allowance of 2 inches. I will connect into a straight line. So next I'm going to mark out my back half length or back waistline, so please pay more attention to this part. So remember, I made mention that I use 17 inches as my front waistline, and I took a bust dart of 4.5 inches which I close. So as we've closed the bust dart, the side is no longer going to be 17 inches. So basically I have reduced the front waistline by 1.5 inches on the side. Remember that the center is still intact, so it has reduced by 1.5 inches by the side. So 17 inches before minus 1.5 inches as my bust dart which I closed. So what you have is what you're going to use as the back half length. Note that this is my own measurement, so I'm going to go ahead to mark out 15.5 inches as my back waistline. So I'm going to go ahead to mark and I will connect it across. Next I'm going to mark out my hip line, so I extended the zipper allowance. So to mark out your hip line again, you're going to bring back this pattern. So you're going to measure from what you have from your waistline to the length of the blouse. Okay, so whatever you have from the waistline to the length of the blouse, that is exactly what you're going to mark out, as you can see. So I'm going to go ahead to connect across. So I'm going ahead to label it. So next I'm going to go ahead to mark out 6.5 inches, just like I did for the front. From the top line I measured down to 6.5 inches, and I will be cutting that part out. So we start right now by marking out my nipple to nipple measurement divided by 2 from the top all the way to the top length or blouse length, and I will go ahead to connect it into a straight line. So I'm going to go up by 2 inches from the top length or the blouse length, sorry. So I went up by 2 inches. On the waistline I'm going to take 1/2 inch on both sides as my dart. I will connect it downward and also connect it upward. So I'm going to go ahead to take my body measurement. So I will take my bust measurement divided by 4. I will mark out my stitching allowance. Note that I am taking all these measurements after the zipper allowance. So coming over to my waistline, I mark out my waist measurement divided by 4, my 1 inch dart and my sewing allowance. On the hip line as well, or the blouse length, I mark out my hip measurement divided by 4, and I mark out my stitching allowance as well. So I will go ahead to connect the 3 points together. So next I'm going to be coming down by 1 inch from here, just like I did for the front. I will come down by 1 inch and blend it back into the dart like this. So I'm going to connect all my lines to the zipper allowance like this. So from the waistline I'm going to be going in by 1/2 inch. This is to avoid any form of zipper bulge, and I will come down by 6 inches from my waistline. I will connect downward with the curved part of my ruler, and I'll also connect upward as well. If you have watched up to this point and you have not subscribed to my channel, please kindly do that. Hit on the subscribe button and give me a thumbs up. So I noticed that that part is too curvy. I straighten it up a bit, as you can see. So after cutting all the patterns, the next thing we're going to do is to work on the panels. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead to work on the panels, and you'll be needing extra papers. You'll be needing plain papers to do that. So I'm starting with my side front. I'm going to place it on top of the paper, and make sure that the paper you are using is up to the waistline. Let it be up to the waistline. Okay, as you can see, it is equal on the down part and it is also up to the waistline. I'm going to use my sellotape to hold it down on both sides so that it doesn't move. I'm going to set it aside, and I'll be repeating this same process on each of the pattern, okay, except the center front that will be having only on one side. like this. So I'll do all that, I'll bring it back. So as you can see, like I said earlier, this is the center front and it's the only one that doesn't have paper on both sides because you're going to cut it on fold. So this is the side front, it has on both sides, and here are my back patterns. I also have the paper on both sides, as you can see. So the next thing I'm going to do is to work on the panels. So I'm going to start with the center front. So here is the main measurement. Here is where my measurement stopped. Okay, so I'm going to mark out 3.5 inches as the wideness of my panel. So feel free to mark out your desired wideness. Okay, you can mark out up to 5 inches. So I'm going to go ahead to connect it to the waistline. Here is the waistline, as you can see. I'm going to connect that 3.5 inches I marked out to the waistline, as you can see. Then from the side, I'm going to go up by 1.5 inches. This is to avoid it from being too pointy on the down part. I'm going to go ahead to use my curve ruler to blend it back into the main piece like this, and I will go ahead to cut out after I am done doing that. So the center front is ready. Okay, so I'm going to work on the side front as well. So exactly what I did on the center front, I'm going to mark out 3.5 inches on both sides. That is after the main measurement. Okay, 2.5 inches on both sides, and you're going to be connecting it to your waistline like this, and connect to the other side as well, to the waistline. And I will go up by 1.5 inches on both sides like this, and also 1.5 inches upward like this. I'm going to blend it into the main pattern like this. Like I said, this is to avoid it from being too pointy on the down part. So I will go ahead to cut it out. So I'm going to be repeating this same process on each and every one of them. So here are my back pieces of patterns. I'm going ahead to do the same thing. 3.5 inches on both sides. I will connect to the waistline. I will go up by 1.5 inches and blend back like this, and I will cut out. And the same method applies to the last one as well. I'm going to mark out 2.5 inches on both sides, connect to the waistline, and then you will go up by 1.5 inches as well and blend into the main piece. So after that is done, I'm going to use all these patterns to cut out my lining piece, cut out my main piece. I've already added all my stitching allowance. So my center front is placed on fold on my fabric, so I'm going to go ahead to cut out. So on the down part, I'm going to be leaving 1 inch for my stitching allowance. On the joining part, I'll be leaving 1/2 inch, as you can see, and on the upper part 1/2 inch as well. So I'll be doing the same thing for all of them. 1 inch on the down part. I've added sewing allowance on the side, then 1/2 inch on the joining area and 1/2 inch on the upper part. So after cutting out my main piece, I'm going to use it to cut out my lining piece, cut out all my interfacing, and then I'll bring it back to show you all what I have. So what I'm doing here is to notch the part I'm going to be joining to the other side. Okay, so after that I'll also notch this part as well. So I'm going to be joining this part to this part. I will notch it so that it will be easier for me to recognize it when I'm joining all my pieces together. So here are all my pieces. I will cut it out on my lining piece and on my interfacing, and I'll bring it back to show you all what I have. So after doing all that, this is what I have. So I use a hairstay for the interfacing of the main piece, and I use a paper stay for the lining piece. And I also cut out my wadding. I pounded it properly, and this is all for that. So I will keep the lining piece aside so that we start working on the main piece. So I will start by placing the side front to the center front. I will secure it with my pin from the top all the way to the down. So after I'm done doing that, I'm going to go ahead to sew by 1/2 inch from top all the way to the down part. I will repeat the same process on the other side as well. I'm going to place it and also go ahead to sew from top to bottom by 1/2 inch. I will bring the back piece. So I'll place one side of the center back to the one side of the side back and sew by 1/2 inch. I will place the other part as well, right side facing right side. I will go ahead to stitch and I'll be back. So I'm going to repeat all that on my lining piece and I'll bring it back. So after I was done joining, this is what I have. I'm going ahead to notch the under bust and the waistline area. Very important. You really need to do that, okay, especially that waist and under bust area, so that when you iron it out, it's going to relax properly. And I'm going to go ahead to open it up so you can see how everything is standing out properly. You can see the bust here, everything is looking all beautiful. Next thing I will do is open up all this seam allowance and iron it out properly. So for the back, I'm also going to notch that waist area. It's very important, guys. You need to notch it, okay? You can see how curvy it is, so you need to notch it and iron out all the seam open so that it will relax properly. So I will go ahead to do that and I'll bring it back. So after I was done ironing out, this is what I have, and here is a lining. So I'm going to keep the marcel. Let's work on the upper part of this blouse. So here is a net I am using for the sleeve. So the length is what I minused from the front and back shoulder put together plus extra 1 inch to it. So remember, I cut out 6.5 inches for the back, 6.5 inches for the front, making 13 inches plus 1.5 inches, and I have 2 of it, while the wideness is 60 inches. So I will go ahead to gather this. You can go ahead to gather it first before attaching it to your main piece, but me, I'm going to be gathering mine on the main piece. So to do that, I'm going to find the midpoint and notch. So I'm going to bring my net and gather it up to from the center front. I'm going to gather it up to the side, leaving my sewing allowance, okay? You're going to be leaving your sewing allowance on the side, and then you will gather all this. Make sure that this net, you gather everything right there, and you're going to repeat this same process on the other side. From the center front, you're going to gather again to the other side. Make sure you leave your stitching allowance on the side, okay? So this is what I have after I was done doing all that I was explaining earlier. You can see that I left stitching allowance on the side, okay? So I'm going to also place this net. I'm going to be sewing this sleeve to the back piece as well. So I'm going to bring my back piece and arrange out properly. So I'm going to arrange that properly, and I'll make sure that the front and the back are facing right side on each other. So you first of all leave your zipper allowance before you start gathering, okay? So I left my zipper allowance, as you can see, and you will gather everything, also leaving your side allowance. And I'll repeat the same thing on the other side. Leave your zipper allowance and gather everything, also leave your side allowance. I will go ahead to do that. So after I was done doing all that, this is what I have. So the blouse is almost ready. The next thing to do is to use my lining piece to turn everything out. So one mistake I made, which I don't want you to repeat it, is reducing my lining piece by 1 inch on the hem. So I don't want you to repeat the same mistake, because it made me to struggle to match up the main piece and the lining piece. After reducing it, it was no longer equal on the side, so I have to struggle to make it equal. So I don't want you to repeat the same mistake, okay? So do not cut out anything from your lining piece. And I'm going to repeat the same thing on the back piece, the back lining piece. So I'm going to cut out 1 inch as well. So after doing all that, I will use it to turn my main piece. So I will arrange my fabric like this, arrange everything properly. I'm going to match the lining piece of the front to the main piece like this. I'm matching the darts together, then I'll match the sides properly. I'm going to stitch by 1/2 inch. I will open up and top stitch, and then I'll put the back piece inside like this and go ahead and also close the down part by 1/2 inch. And after that, I will also close the sides, leaving a tiny opening where I will turn out the back piece from. So after sewing everything like I explained, I'm going to pass through that little space where I left and turn everything inside out properly, and I'll be closing that tiny hole. I'll be stitching it, and then I'm going to go ahead to also turn the back piece with my lining piece. So I'm going to turn the upper part, top stitch, and turn the down part and the side. So the zipper allowance remains open. I'm not turning the zipper allowance. So for the other side as well, I will turn the upper part, top stitch, and turn the side. So after I was done doing that, you can see I'm turning it out from the zipper allowance. I didn't turn the zipper allowance, as you can see. I'll turn everything out properly, and I will give it a good press. So the next thing I'm going to do is to turn the side, to join the side rather. I've already done that and attached my zipper. The video has become so long, so I have to do all that off the camera. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel, like this video, share and comment. Bye.